Started. Thanks for joining us today in our undergraduate webinar. There isn't a lot of new news today. We are still in the period of time that they're revisiting all the registration. They are looking at classes, the classrooms that are available for those classes. I have received word that we will be getting the updated schedule to review on Monday and Tuesday, and then it will be released on Wednesday. Based on what I've heard thus far, I think most of the changes will be to classrooms. There won't be as many changes to time periods. The university is very sensitive of the fact that a lot of students already have their schedules, and so they don't want to create new conflicts. But as they've gone and looked at classrooms, there might be some classes that are adjusted that way. So that will be released on Wednesday. I also have received some questions specifically asking about how the university is going to make sure that students wear masks. And so what the regulations or what the rules are for faculty, staff, and students when we all get back in the fall is that any place that we're inside a building, we need to be wearing a mask unless you're sitting in an office by yourself or a study room by yourself. And so masks will need to be worn in indoor spaces. We will also be socially distancing 6 feet away. The way that people not wearing masks will be handled is as a behavioral issue. So if you see somebody in a classroom or a professor sees someone in a classroom, first of all, they will know if that student has an ADA accommodation. So there are some medical conditions that make wearing a mask difficult, and so students will need to get pre-authorization if they have one of those conditions through the ADA office, and they will have an accommodation. So professors will see anybody who is not wearing a mask. The first thing they'll do is check and see if they don't have a mask because that there's not one available. All students, staff, and faculty will be sent a mask to their home. And then if you happen to forget your mask or something happens to your mask, there will be some available for you to go get down in the front desk of the Spencer Fox Eccles Business Building. And so if a student is just choosing not to wear a mask, then that does get treated as a behavioral issue with the dean of students kind of taking charge of that potential issue. So I think that for students, you should definitely understand before coming to campus how we're handling this and what the regulations are. And then you should also feel comfort in the fact that the university is going to make sure that people are wearing their masks to protect everybody on campus. So that was the only big main issue or question that came to me. And so I want to see if there's other questions that anybody has. We have Kathy Hajeb here today from Housing, and Sheena McFarland's here as well, and she posts all of this information to our website. And you can get to that by looking at our website fall 2020. So it's eccles.link/fall 2020. And we've archived all of the webinars that we've done. So Kathy, I'll turn it over to you for a minute to see if there's anything new to update on housing, and then we'll go to the Q&A. And if you have questions, please type it into the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of your screen. So Kathy?
Thanks, Andrea. So as Andrea mentioned, I'm here from the Lassonde Entrepreneur Institute in Lassonde Studios, and we're just really excited to get you guys back. We've missed you all summer, so we're excited to have students come back. Housing move-in will be a little bit different this year. It will be extended over a longer period of time to accommodate, elevator usage, social distancing, things like that. So watch your email if you're coming to campus. To live at Lassonde Studios or any of the general housing buildings, you'll be given your move-in time. And then anticipate, again, that you'll be asked to wear a mask in open community spaces. It's It's going to really be a focus on making sure students stay healthy and have a really good time when they come back. And so know that the campus housing group has a well-established tradition of managing students that don't feel well during an academic year. They have isolation spaces on campus, and they arrange for meals to be delivered. Every year when we have the seasonal flu, we have students that fall into that category. So feel comfortable that there's a well-established protocol and process if you don't feel well, that you'll slip into that and be able to manage any kind of illness that you've got.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kathy. We have a question. Are students going to be tested before coming to campus? So there was a lot of discussion early on, and UHealth was very involved in the discussions about testing and testing protocols. So testing is available in healthcare facilities. So if students are concerned and go to the doctor, they can get a test there, but we not doing mass testings of students on campus before they come in. I do know there's some quarantine protocols that will be in place depending on where students are coming from. You know, right now there's a lot up in the air about borders and international students and whether they're able to fly across the border. You know, certain states, you know, they're watching very carefully. So they haven't published any quarantine protocols from within the students coming from state and how long they will have to quarantine, if at all. Internationally, they have discussed that there is going to be a quarantine, but there is not going to be testing of students and check into their dorms or before they go and check into classrooms. That just wasn't something that we could execute. We couldn't get the protocols to work in a way, and the risks associated was something that UHealth looked at. And so if you wanted to get tested, you would need to go to a UHealth facility or your own health facility to get tested. Same with temperature checks. That was something that was discussed a lot, and there won't be thermometers or temperature checks as you go into the classroom. We are asking everybody who feels symptomatic, even if you don't know what, if you're not feeling well at all, then you shouldn't come to class, and your professors will be prepared to give you the content of that class either remotely or through a video. So if you're feeling sick at all, you won't be penalized for not coming to class. In fact, the opposite, you will be asked to please stay away so that you don't infect anybody else. There's also a very specific protocol for contact tracing. So every student will be assigned to a seat in each class, so we'll know who's sitting around you. And so if somebody does get sick, then we can reach out to all the people who are sitting around them and let them know that we need them to quarantine during a period of time. So all of that is going to be managed in real time, you know, managing the situations of people being sick as opposed to temperatures and testing ahead of time. I have another question. Let's see. If my students want to have a roommate tested, can Utah facilitate? That's going to be a medical question as well. So with the academic side, that is not something, testing is not something that's going to be available just across campus. That's something that they'll need to go to a medical facility, and there's lots of medical facilities for students either on campus. I mean, campus is connected to the hospital up there, but that's something that they'll need to do through the health side of things. Not something that the academic side is going to be offering or having available outside of the health. So that would be up to your student to talk to his or her roommate to ask them to do that, or for them to decide what to do there. Let's see, I have another question. Will access to thermometers be available at the dorms? I believe you should bring, if you're concerned, you should bring your own thermometers. And this is something that the same way when people get sick, people go, there's a clinic in the Union building, there's an urgent care up in the hospital. So those places are going to be the place that you would normally send somebody who's sick. Kathy, do you know anything about whether you're going to have any stations in the dorms to check temperatures or anything like that?
No, and I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory with it. So you can imagine students will be going to class. They'll be moving in with their roommates, respective roommates. So what I'm hearing in these thread of questions is just a really nice kind of maybe roommate partnership that your student and their roommate can talk about. Of, you know, is it something before they come to campus they both want to share, kind of that they've received tests, that they're both COVID negative. Maybe the same way they kind of think about sharing supplies for their dorm room. Maybe one of them brings a thermometer, or if it's a personal item you want to bring. There won't be stations that will facilitate this, but know that the Student Health Center that is right here on campus has certainly got all of the medical resources and facilities and will be able to help in that regard.
Great, thank you, Kathy. There's another question about the parent virtual orientation. So I'm making assumption that this is the business scholars parent orientation. So there is new student orientation going on all summer long. There will be an orientation virtually for parents of business scholars, of incoming business scholars, and that's going to be August 20th at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. So if you're here in Utah, moving your student in or whatever, then it's going to be 4 p.m. Mountain Time. If you're somewhere else, you can call in. We will be sending an email to all parents with the link. And so we'll be doing it at 4 p.m. Mountain Time on Thursday, August 20th. Checking questions. Okay, that's all the questions that I have right now. I'll wait a couple of minutes to see if anybody else has another question. I will let you know that next week, even though it's like July 4th weekend, we're gonna still be having a webinar on the 2nd, so that's Thursday at 1 p.m. Since schedules are going to be available on Wednesday the 1st, we wanted to make ourselves available to answer any questions that may come from that. Incoming freshmen, the pause and registration will reopen on July 6th. And so if you have questions ahead of that, we'll be able to answer that on the next webinar on Thursday at 1 p.m., Thursday, July 2nd at 1 p.m. I'm double checking, so no additional questions have come in. So if you continue to have questions, sometimes the university will send out an announcement and you might have questions that come before we have these webinars. So you can go on eccles.link/fall2020 and ask a question. You can let us know of a topic you want to make sure that we cover. And then you can also go to the University of Utah. They have a Return to Campus website that has a lot of really good information. We also update on a regular basis the frequently asked questions, or FAQ document, that we have on our Eccles website. So that's a great place to go if you're looking for information. So we just want to be sure that you have all the information that you need. So I did have one more question about where students are going to be allowed to hang out between classes and what areas will be open. So what's happening is the normal places that you might hang out in groups aren't going to be available. So I was in the building, the Spencer Fox Eccles building yesterday, and they were removing some of the places where students would sit in a group. And so what we are doing is outside, while the weather is good, is a great place for people to be, because from a risk standpoint, there's a different risk level inside as there is outside. So we are going to be setting up tents that will keep you out of the sun and the weather around the business complex, so people can go out there and study and congregate in very reasonable, like 6 feet distancing. And then I haven't heard yet what the library is going to be doing. Kathy, do you have a sense in the dorms, if people are living in the dorms, what you are doing with your common areas? I know we're setting it up so that people can keep the 6 foot distancing.
You know, I think that's exactly right. So the library, the hangar at Lassonde Studios, all of those common spaces, we'll do our best to remove chairs so that you are not encouraged to sit as closely as you have in the past. But we know, for example, at Lassonde Studios, students move chairs and tables around all the time. And so what we're asking is students to be mindful, to be aware, to be considerate of others. It's going to be a socially distant fall 2020, and we're all going to kind of get comfortable with stepping back a little bit, you know, not shaking hands, not giving hugs quite like we have in the past. And so I can imagine that we'll all kind of get our 6 foot kind of radar set, and we'll know that while there are spaces to hang out, we'll kind of take our spot on a socially distanced couch or table from another student.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kathy. I do know that we're adding seating 6 feet apart in the outdoor eating spaces. So the fifth floor there's a terrace on the fifth floor of the Spencer Fox Eccles building. There's tables set up outside of the CRCC. So we're adding some tables. Garf has some tables set out outside as well. And so we're setting those up 6 feet apart like you see in restaurants now. As you go in, the tables are spaced further apart. But that we're setting up a few more of those so that there will be places. And then we have a lot of really nice grass outdoor areas on campus that, you know, you'll need to sit 6 feet away, but there are places that you can gather there. So I have another question. How are students new and returning going to be trained or briefed on proper practices, as they may not have had practices before arrival on campus? So there's orientations happening, and there's going to be very specific information and training in those orientations. And then students will also be getting information in all the normal ways that we communicate with them. So the syllabus is going to be much more detailed on these types of practices, and it's going to be consistent class to class. And then through orientations, everybody who's coming back to campus from a staff standpoint has to do a training to know all of the rules and regulations for that. And I'm sure that they'll have something similar for students. And then I know, Kathy, that's part of your process of students moving in to make sure they understand that.
Well, and I'll also tell you something kind of fun. So I've been working with the Dean of Students office just today, and they're looking for student leaders on campus. They're rolling out some fun kind of media, peer-to-peer kind of task force of how students can inspire each other. So, you know, there's one thing for administrators to put together protocols. They're also in the process of trying to really put some fun training and some fun interactions together through a media campaign. I can imagine we'll have ambassadors in different buildings, in different spaces, that will really encourage students and remind them it's going to be something all of us are going to have to practice.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, each student will receive a mask from the university that's going to be mailed to their home address in plenty of time. And I'm sure that there will be specific instructions associated with when and how that mask is going to be used and other social distancing information. So we will make sure. Also signage. We are working with the university, so there'll be signage across the university, and there's also going to be specific signage within all of the business buildings. There will be directional arrows on the floor. There will be, I've already seen the masks or the signs that are requiring masks as you enter a building. So there's going to be a lot of signage around campus to make sure that everybody knows what is required and expected. So I think we've answered all of the questions that we have thus far. As I mentioned, we'll be back next Thursday. Happy to answer any other questions that you have. And we are monitoring the situation very, very closely. The university is communicating new information all the time as decisions are made. So I feel like there's a lot of places that you can go if you have questions, and the direction where we don't have answers yet, it's coming soon as we get additional information. And a big day next Wednesday to have all the classes, the information for your registration up and running. So we'll be able to answer questions about that next Thursday. So hopefully you're all doing well. Stay safe. We're excited to be back. If you're in summer classes, hopefully those are going well for you. And we're looking forward to seeing you in the fall and keeping everybody safe and healthy. So thank you for attending today. We really, really appreciate it.